Welcome to the 2020 version of Destiny 2 in 2026. This has been made possible by Project Sunrise, which is made by a user on GitHub called Stan Uwu. I believe there was a bunch of people involved in the testing and helped with development to some extent, and also the artwork for the project. So I'll link the GitHub page in the description, and hopefully I'll remember to put a bit of a credit thing on the screen of who's involved according to the GitHub page. But essentially what this lets us do, as a summary, it lets us launch and play the version of Destiny 2 from right before Beyond Light launched, so that's during Season of Arrivals this build is from, and therefore it's right before the vaulting happened. So we have a bunch of locations available that obviously aren't in the game nowadays. This will look very familiar to people who played the game back then, but Mercury, Io, Mars, and Titan aren't in the current version of Destiny 2, and neither is a Tangled Shore, although it got removed after Beyond Light came out, like it was a few updates later. So yes, we can play this. It isn't fully functional. It does let you go to each destination, but there's no enemies, there's no vendors, so this isn't just because I had my HUD off. There are actually no vendors in the tower here. So if I go down here, Caddy's not there, Tess isn't there, Banshee and Raoul, that's his name, isn't there either, but that's just because, enemies, vendors don't spawn in. You can use weapons, however, if we look at the inventory quickly, there aren't extra weapons. This can be modified in the configs file, so I won't go too far in depth with that currently. But I changed this stuff just to have different weapons than what was there by default. And you can change your armor, but again, you have to do that via a config file. So if you go to collections and try to claim anything, it does sort of progress, but it doesn't give you the item. And that's just because Destiny 2 runs. Most of it relies on a server telling it what to do. So enemy actions, I believe, are sort of controlled by the server about where the enemies go. And if you claim a weapon from collections, it sort of contacts the server to ask, can I have this? So because that doesn't exist in this build, it's completely offline. It just doesn't do it. So anyway, that's the technical stuff out of the way. I'm very excited to play this. I really recommend going to the GitHub link and having a look there if you need any extra information and if you want to play it, most importantly. It is only on PC. It's because it relies on an old version of the game which you can download from Steam, and PCs just are more flexible than PlayStations or Xboxes, so that's why. So we'll start off in the tower. My plan is just to explore a few destinations, not make it too long, but maybe have a few videos covering this. But this is the tower from right before Beyond Light's launch. So we've got the old, destroyed, or damaged, I suppose, Traveller. You've got the really in bad shape tower over there, so you can really compare that with the tower we have nowadays. The Traveller shocks me the most, honestly, because the current tower that we have is really, really good. I do like the Monument of Triumph and the nice grass they have around the place, of course, the tree that's beside Zavala nowadays. And I am really happy that they brought the Traveller back into the city, but it's really far away, and I didn't really notice it when just playing Destiny as the game evolved. But looking at how close the Traveller is here, they pushed it back really far, and it's a real shame. I actually wish they had have kept the Traveller this close, because it just creates so much more atmosphere. So that is kind of sad. So with Beyond Light's launch, they did reconfigure the engine a good bit and changed how lighting works and that sort of thing. You wouldn't really notice it too much if you had have just kept playing the game over the years, and I certainly just got used to it. But if you go back to old destinations that were in this build of Destiny 2 and compare it with the current build of Destiny 2, it's really obvious how much it changed. And in most cases, I actually prefer this old build of Destiny 2's version of the lighting, at least for the destinations that were in both games. So one example is this Traveller. So I got this comparison shot from the Zero Hour mission because that's the one instance, to my knowledge, of the damaged Traveller still being in live Destiny 2. The lighting is completely different. In the old build, the Traveller just looked better. There was light sort of gushing out from it. There was a stream of light coming off from the right hand side, almost like a cloud of light. The moon just casts such better light. And I think if you compare between the two versions, I would say that Destiny's lighting nowadays looks more realistic. But the old lighting looked better. I think that's how I would say it. But it really highlights to me how I think they could have just cut Destiny 2 off at this old build and then released beyond maybe a year later than what they expected, or a wee bit in the future, and have that be Destiny 3, and Destiny 3 is the live Destiny 2 currently, because the lighting is actually so different. I'm walking around this build and it's really nostalgic. Even this tower, even areas which haven't changed other than the lighting, it fills me with all these memories, because it's just the lighting is so different nowadays. Here's the bazaar, obviously without Ikora or any NPCs, but this is so much more atmospheric, I think. I'm sure they probably did rework the tower's lighting to suit the better, the newer engine a bit more, but I prefer how it looked in this build of the game. One really weird thing about the annex, because you sort of think, well, the annex has been in the game since Forsaken, it's not really changed that much, but one thing that has changed is Ada's wee area. So in the current build with Destiny 2, as you'll know, you can just walk straight through here. There's a big opening between these two, well, in this wall basically. But back in this build, you have to go down a wee secret passageway. And this is the proper Black Armory area, not the stupid synth-weave facility now. Not that it looks bad necessarily, but I think this just looks so much better. Gambit Man's wee area hasn't differed too much, but the penumbral or umbral thingy-mabobber, which was in the Helm for ages, but obviously the Helm isn't in this build either, because this actually predates the Helm's existence, which is wild to me, because it feels like the Helm's been in the game forever, but this was actually right before we got the Helm. So really quite wild. This would be used to decrypt the umbral engram that you would get during Season of Arrivals. So really cool. And lastly, for the tower, we have the hangar, which hasn't changed an awful lot apart from Saint's ship. It wasn't here yet, but apart from that, it's pretty much the same. Not too much has changed. So before we move on, I did go through, before recording this, to the EDZ and Nessus just to compare the lighting changes between the two destinations. Now the screenshots I've taken are at different times of day, kind of. I tried to get it as close as possible, but it just wasn't quite working out. But I think it still illustrates really well how different the lighting changes are. My personal opinion on the whole thing is the old version is more saturated and colourful, but the new version is crisper, and I would say it's more realistic. Now, I do think for the likes of Nessus, the old version just looks undeniably better. It just is better. Nessus is a very vibrant place. In the new version of Destiny, in the current build, it just feels washed out, and I just can't describe it any other way than just a bit dull. And that's not how Nessus should have looked. I've also noticed that some foliage just exists in the old build, which isn't in the new build. It's very strange. The EDZ I actually prefer in the new build, which has shocked me, because I actually thought it would have been better in the old one, given that Nessus was. But nope, I think it actually looks better in the new one, a bit more saturated, surprisingly. Now, the Cabal Lost Sector areas look undeniably better in the old one. It is just more saturated, and that's just the thing that you'll see throughout these comparisons. I also went to the moon. Now the moon looks completely different, because there's the Leviathan in the new version, there's that Cabal ship above the Scarlet Keep. They look really different. The lighting even just looks really different, and I can't put a favourite, honestly. They look pretty good in their own ways, and that's perfectly fine to me, honestly. I think the main thing is they not only did they remove so much from the game during the vaulting, they also changed how the existing content looked with the lighting changes, and it made it feel like a completely different game. And we are at the point where the live version of Destiny 2 feels vaguely like this build. It is still the same game, but I'm tempted to just be like, this is Destiny 2, and the live build is Destiny 3, because you can really see the differences whenever you're playing this old build. Future Paul here. I decided to cut this video into a few different parts because I ended up going to Titan IO and just spending ages rambling and reminiscing about the old times. So I thought this was a good point to leave off this video. Definitely check out the Project Sunrise GitHub in the description. The link's there. Stay tuned for more videos exploring this old build if you wish. But either way, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a like, maybe even subscribing, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye.